Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Wednesday, the 23rd of February 2022, and we're publishing our 2022 silver price forecast. Now, 2 days ago, we produced our gold 2022 forecast, and we've placed a link in the description box below if you've not had an opportunity to listen to it. Now, one of the most looked out for videos in the gold and silver space is the forecast given by banks, investment institutions, economists, precious metal miners, bullion dealers, YouTubers and bloggers, stating where they believe gold and silver prices will end up by the end of the year. As mentioned at the start, we've already published our gold forecast, and one is now concentrating on silver. It will come as no surprise that, broadly speaking, at least from a monetary point of view, many of the factors which affect the gold price also affects the price of silver, but generally to a slightly different degree. Now, what do we mean? Well, the factors which affect both gold and silver include the value of the US dollar, envisaged mine supply versus prospective physical demand, the existing price of silver and where it stands in a traditional calendar cycle, how are alternate investment vehicles faring and likely to fare, for example, equities, cryptos, bonds, property also to some degree, the prospects of rising interest rates to help combat inflation, and potential black swans. However, silver is different in two key areas: industrial demand and government central bank demand. You see, the four demand areas for gold can be summarized as jewelry fabrication, industrial applications, government and central banks, and private investors. Well, central banks and governments, apart from perhaps some small strategic reserves, do not tend to purchase silver. However, the industrial demand for silver is where it shines. Gold generally has an industrial demand of somewhere between 8 to 10%, whereas the industrial demand for silver is at or around 50%. This means that silver's demand is much more highly correlated to how well the economy is doing when compared with gold. It should be of no surprise that whilst we've been in a pandemic-ridden economy these last 2 years, with consumer demand plummeting in the last year alone, the price of gold year to year has risen by 5% due to its monetary demand, and the price of silver is down 13%. And this is allowing for recent rises. The gold to silver ratio also hints at this, whereas on the 19th of March 2020, the GSR was as high as 123. It has since fallen back to 79 to 1 as the economy has begun to improve. We should also briefly look at the question of manipulation. The silver market is tiny compared with gold. At current prices, the silver market capitalization is worth around $1 trillion, whereas the size of the gold market is 12 trillion. Central banks and governments do not buy silver, and therefore any suspicions of their intervening to manipulate the market to some degree is quite fanciful in our view, and really pointless. Also, if you bear in mind that in the UK and Europe, VAT of up to 20% is added to the price of silver, which is paid directly to the exchequer, it's actually in these institutions' best interest to see a higher silver price than a lower one, because obviously the tax revenue goes up. That said, of course, we still have the dishonourable and manipulative traders, especially paper traders, who do from time to time manipulate the market to make a quick buck, and affecting stop losses for their benefit. Now that, we would certainly agree happens, but frankly a market cap of just $1 trillion really is not worth the bother of a cohesive attempt by governments worldwide to downplay silver's price, and most certainly not on a regular basis if there has been an intervention or two in the past. We just don't see the logic behind it. Okay, now with that in mind, where do the so-called experts see the price going in 2022? Now, for reference, the price, as at the last day of 2021, was $23.32, and currently it stands at $24.16. Well, looking at some of the major commentators, we have the Bank of America predicting an average silver price of just around $30, Metals Focus predicting an average of $25.75, Scotiabank predicting $25. Commerzbank analyst Carsten Fritsch sees silver reaching 26 an ounce this year. Goldman Sachs just predicting a higher price than for 2021. And ANZ Heinz sees silver ending the year at just $22 an ounce after peaking at 24 mid-2022. Now, admittedly, that forecast was given in December and we've already exceeded that 24 peak, and it's only February. Now, Jeff Clark from Gold Silver predicts a minimum high of 30 and a potential high with no crisis of 35 and a potential high with a crisis of 50, with a 90% likelihood of silver being higher in 2022 than it was in 2021. Now, the likelihood of it being higher this year than last may be well founded when one considers what the Silver Institute reported recently. It stated that it expects a 13% rise in photovoltaic demand, 10% gain in the electronic sector, and a 10% increase in brazing alloy and solder demand. On top of this, it also reported that silver demand in 2021 reached just over 1 billion ounces, the first time it exceeded 1 billion since 2015, and so we can only expect even greater demand this year. Now, we have little doubt that we shall see silver rise significantly this decade, if only because of the rush to green technologies. Even in the UK, which normally lags behind other countries in this area, the government has given an edict that it expects all cars to be produced here by 2030 to be entirely electric or battery driven. The rush to solar energy, especially with prices literally skyrocketing for other forms of energy provision, is unlikely to abate. You only have to look at Bitcoin miners and their use of solar panels to give you an idea of where that technology is heading in terms of potential and future demand. Now, investment demand is the second highest demand for silver after industrial demand, and again Metals Forecast reported that it expected demand for physical silver investment to rise by 32% in 2021, which represents a 6-year high. Now, of course, we have to determine will that be repeated or improved upon in 2022. The Silver Institute's latest report on 2021 shows an overall prediction of silver demand to reach 1.029 million ounces and supply 1.022 million, thereby creating a deficit of 7 million ounces, rising to 157 million, allowing for a net investment in ETPs. We cannot, however, ignore the fact that silver mine supplies also increased in 2021 by an estimated 8%, and this is during a period of lockdowns. One must assume, therefore, that this percentage would be higher if normal trade resumed. This is the other side of the coin we have to at least consider. Now, looking around the web, we can see that coinpriceforecast.com predicts a $26.56 silver price by the end of this year, and Mr. Radomski of sunshineprofits.com is bearish silver, expecting a significant price decline this year. Bullion by Post in the UK states many analysts believe silver is overdue a bull run, but are unsure whether 2022 is the year that the silver price will rise significantly. Investment demand remains high, but industrial demand is still being held back by shortages of other materials. The semiconductor shortage plaguing many electronic producers will also keep silver demand down. However, further advancements in green technologies and electronic vehicle adoption should continue, however, and will certainly help boost the silver price in 2022 going forward. Now, after the gold-silver ratio reaching a record high of 123 in 2020, it's since fallen back but remains above historical averages. Sitting at around 80 at the time of writing, gold remains close to its all-time high, while silver still has a long way to go. The gold-silver ratio could point to some further gains to come for the silver price in 2022, unquote. Now, longforecast.com, which tends to be a little conservative, predicts the December silver price closing at $23.64, with a peak for silver this year occurring in May at or around $28.68. And of course, we have the inevitable likes of Lynette Zhang on YouTube predicting $1,000 an ounce silver. But she does admit to some degree that we would need an almost total economic collapse for that to happen. And frankly, as we often state, what will the price of a loaf of bread be when you get such a collapse? $100 or more? So what is $1,000 silver really worth then? So where do we see silver going this year and ending 2022? Well, we cannot ignore what is going on between Russia and Ukraine and prospective infractions between China and Taiwan. We cannot ignore the fact that economies are now opening up, but we still do not know for certain to what extent COVID-19 or any of its various strains may impact on our ability to work in the coming months. We cannot ignore the fact either that inflation is running out of control and most central banks have either begun or have promised to raise interest rates, and we are expecting the Fed to do so in March, the start, perhaps, of a number of 0.25% rate rises in 2022 moving through 2023. The Bank of England and the UK has already raised rates in January and February, and many are predicting another rise when they next meet next month. The dollar index is holding relatively strong at around 96, while equity and crypto markets have taken a slight beating. We still cannot rule out, however, that these will still compete for funds this year, unless there is, of course, a further exodus from these markets. What is interesting to share is that on a year-to-year basis, to this very day, silver's down $3. On a 3-year basis, it's up 8. On a 5-year basis, it's up 6. But on a 10-year basis, it's down 11. But that is, of course, taking into account that just over 10 years ago, silver was very close to its all-time high, almost reaching $50 in May 2011. $49 is closer, really, but 50 is a nice round number. So silver's not proven to be a great investment these past 10 or 11 years. The World Bank is predicting lower prices for silver each year from now until 2035, which frankly we do not agree with. However, it is interesting to note that even at its lowest is quoting an average of $20, though it does suggest there could be a dip as low as 18. UK research firm Capital Economics falls into the bearish camp for gold and are not bullish on silver either, as both tend to move in similar directions, while silver frequently, though, lags gold. So we have a range of options where people believe silver will perform somewhere between $20 and $30, perhaps $35 with a crisis if Jeff Clark is accurate. If we use our fag packet test, which we use for gold, and just for clarification, a fag is a slang term we use in the UK for cigarette, so it's a cigarette packet and nothing else, we can see that silver tends to move around $1 a week in either direction on average, and tends to average out each month, give or take $1. Accumulatively, moves no better or worse than around $4 we should expect to see on that basis, thereby to the downside giving us a silver price no lower than $20, and to the upside no more than 28. But that is certainly not scientific. Using our algorithm, we're expecting a stronger period for gold in the first half of 2022 than the second, and really traditionally silver tends to follow suit whatever happens to gold, but a couple of months behind. As interest rates rise, this will act admittedly as a dampening effect for sure, but as economies gain speed, providing they do of course, then we should see greater industrial usage and demand. So our assessment for this year, at last drum roll, is that silver's low will not go below $20, but is most likely just to test 21. And its high, in our view, will not exceed $31, even allowing for problems with Russia. Now, of course, if there's an all-out war, then anything can happen. But, allowing the fact that only sanctions will be applied, 31 is the highest we expect silver to reach. We anticipate that silver will end the year a little higher than it is now, even though we'll have higher interest rates, if only because we're expecting an improving economic growth scenario in the second half of the year, and particularly towards the end. So with this in mind, we expect silver to close the year between $27 and $28 an ounce. What do you think? Please share your thoughts, but meanwhile, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, press the bell sign. Until our next video. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.